This is HOA clapback. She threatened towing like it was punctuation. Welcome in. This one gets wild fast, so settle in and let me walk you through how a barcode sticker nearly cost me everything. I was standing in my driveway in Briarwood Terrace, Seattle, on a cool evening with sharp contrast and dramatic shadows stretching across the pavement, when Evelyn Roberts waved a barcode sticker in my face and yelled that the scan results said tow and she trusted the scan. "Your file says repeat offender," she said, jabbing the handheld plate scanner toward my windshield like it was a weapon. I had never been towed in my life. I had never even gotten a parking ticket in this neighborhood. But Evelyn did not care about facts. She cared about the scan, and the scan said I was done. I am a city permit tech. I know what requires a permit and what does not. I know the difference between a public street and private HOA property. I know what a legal tow authorization looks like, and this was not it. Evelyn Roberts was the vendor coordinator for the Briarwood Terrace Association, which meant she was the one who hired the tow company, the one who decided what violations got enforced, and the one who got to call the shots when it came to boots, clamps, and wheel lifts. She had been in the role for 3 years, and in that time, she had turned guest parking into a blood sport. The problem started 2 weeks earlier. I work nights, city permit desk, strict shift times, and gate access is everything. If I cannot park, I cannot work. If I cannot work, I lose the job. My schedule is tight, my margin is zero, and Evelyn knew it. She had been watching me for months, ever since I pushed back on a bogus fire lane violation that she tried to slap on my truck when I was unloading groceries in front of my own garage. That violation disappeared after I sent one email to the management company with photos and a copy of the fire code, but Evelyn did not forget. She just got smarter. 2 weeks ago, a tow truck started patrolling my street. I would see it roll past in the late afternoon, slow down in front of my house, and then keep going. The first time I thought it was random. The second time I started paying attention. The third time, I walked outside and asked the driver what he was looking for. He said he was contracted by the HOA to enforce guest parking and street parking bans. I asked who called him. He said he could not say. I asked if he had a specific complaint. He said no, just routine patrol. Then he drove off. I went to the HOA office the next morning and asked Evelyn directly if she had called a tow company to patrol my street. She looked me in the eye and said no. She said the tow company sometimes patrols on their own initiative to look for expired decals and guest pass violations, and that the HOA did not control their schedule. I asked her if that was even legal. She smiled and said, "I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says." That was the first time I heard her say it, and it would not be the last. The tow truck came back the next day, and this time it stopped in front of my house. I was inside getting ready for my shift when I heard the diesel engine idling outside. I looked out the window and saw the wheel lift backing up to my guest's car. My friend had parked on the street legally with a valid guest pass on the dashboard. The pass was inside the windshield, facing out, exactly where the rules said it was supposed to be. I ran outside in my work clothes, vest still half on, and asked the driver what he was doing. He said he had authorization to tow any vehicle without a valid decal. I pointed at the guest pass. He said guest passes do not count on this street after 6 p.m. I asked where that rule was written. He said the HOA gave him a list. Evelyn appeared from around the corner like she had been waiting for this exact moment. She was carrying a clipboard, a bright yellow vehicle immobilizer tire clamp lying on the ground like a threat beside her feet, and that handheld plate scanner in her other hand. She walked up, scanned my guest's plate, and the scanner beeped. She looked at the screen, nodded, and said, "This one is flagged." Tow it. I asked her what flag meant. She said the system tracks repeat offenders and vehicles that park in violation zones. I told her my guest had been here once, total, and had a valid pass. She said, "I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Evelyn did not flinch. She kept talking to the tow driver, pointing at the car, checking off something on her clipboard. I asked her again to show me the written rule that banned guest passes after 6 p.m. She said it was in the updated enforcement guidelines that went out last month. I said I never got any updated guidelines. She said that was my problem, not hers. I asked the tow driver if he had a signed authorization from the HOA board. He looked at Evelyn. She said, "I am the authorization. I can make this a lean conversation in one email." That was the boomerang line. "I can make this a lean conversation in one email." She said it calm, clear and cold, like she had used it 100 times before. I did not know it then, but that sentence was going to be the hinge that broke her entire operation. I acted like I was backing down, because timing was the whole weapon. I told my guest to move the car before the tow driver hooked it, and I walked back inside. Evelyn stood there on the curb, orange cones tucked under one arm like a trophy, watching me go. She thought she won. She had no idea I was already building a case. I work in city permits. I know how to pull records. I know how to read contracts. I know how to follow a paper trail until it dead ends in a lie. That night, I filed a public records request with the management company for 3 things: the current guest parking policy, the signed contract with the tow vendor, and any enforcement logs from the past 6 months. I also sent an email to the board president asking for clarification on the 6 p.m. guest pass rule and requesting a copy of the updated guidelines Evelyn mentioned. I kept the tone professional, neutral, and boring. I did not accuse anyone of anything. I just asked questions. The next morning, I got an email back from the board president saying she would look into it. 2 hours later, Evelyn called me. Not emailed. Called. She said she heard I was asking questions about the tow policy, and she wanted to make sure I understood that guest parking enforcement was a safety issue and that the board fully supported her authority to manage vendors. I asked her if she could send me the updated guidelines. She said they were posted in the clubhouse. I said I work nights and the clubhouse is locked when I am off shift. She said that was not her problem. I asked if she could email them. She said she did not have time to send individual emails to every homeowner who could not be bothered to check the bulletin board. Then she hung up. 3 days later, I got the records. The management company sent me a PDF packet with the guest parking policy, which had not been updated in 2 years, and a tow vendor contract that was signed 8 months ago. The contract included a fee schedule. The HOA paid the tow company a flat monthly rate for patrol services, plus a per-tow bonus. The per-tow bonus was $400. The homeowner got charged $600. That meant every tow generated a $1,000 transaction, and Evelyn was the one authorizing them. The enforcement logs were worse. In the past 6 months, the tow company had logged 42 tows from Briarwood Terrace. 38 of them were guest parking violations. 16 of those were overturned after the homeowner complained, but the fees were never refunded. The logs showed Evelyn as the primary contact for all tow authorizations, and her name appeared on every single incident report. The logs also showed something else. 3 of the tows happened on public streets outside HOA jurisdiction, including one in front of a fire hydrant that the city later confirmed was legal parking. I printed everything. I highlighted the contradictions. I made a timeline. Then I sent the whole packet to my neighbor, The one who caught Evelyn on doorbell video at night near my property 2 weeks before the tow truck started showing up. He had sent me the footage the day after I asked if he had seen anything weird. The video showed Evelyn walking up my driveway at 11 p.m., shining a flashlight at my car and taking photos of my license plate with her phone. She did not knock. She did not leave a note. She just photographed my car and left. I forwarded the video and the records packet to the board president and copied the management company. I asked 3 questions. Why was Evelyn photographing my car at night? Why did the guest parking policy on file not match the enforcement guidelines she claimed existed? And why were homeowners being charged for tows that were later overturned but never refunded? I kept it short. I kept it factual. I did not call anyone a liar. I just put the evidence on the table and waited. The board president responded in 4 hours. She said she was not aware of any nighttime property inspections and that she would be scheduling an emergency board meeting to review the tow vendor contract and enforcement procedures. She also said that any homeowner who had been charged for an overturned tow could submit a refund request to the management company. She did not mention Evelyn by name, but she did not have to. The message was clear. Someone was in trouble. Evelyn did not wait for the meeting. She went nuclear. That night, she posted in the neighborhood group chat. She did not mention me by name, but she did not have to. She wrote a long post about how certain homeowners were trying to undermine safety enforcement and create chaos by questioning legitimate vendor relationships. She said that guest parking violations were out of control, that the board had given her full authority to manage enforcement, and that anyone who had a problem with the tow policy was welcome to move to a neighborhood without rules. She ended the post with a link to the HOA covenants and a reminder that all homeowners had signed an agreement to follow the rules when they bought their property. The group chat exploded. Half the neighbors piled on, calling me a troublemaker and saying I was trying to get people towed by making the HOA drop enforcement. The other half started asking questions about refunds and whether the 6 p.m. rule was real. One neighbor posted a screenshot of the official guest parking policy from the HOA website, which did not mention any time restrictions. Another neighbor said her guest had been towed 3 months ago and she was still waiting for a refund. A third neighbor said Evelyn had threatened to ban her from the pool after she complained about a guest pass rejection. The thread went on for 6 hours. I did not post once. I just watched. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, smash that like button and subscribe, because it is about to get so much worse. The next morning, Evelyn sent an email to the entire board with me copied. The subject line was Compliance Escalation Request. In the email, she said that I had been harassing her with phone calls, threatening her with legal action, and attempting to interfere with vendor operations. She said that my behavior was creating a hostile environment and that she was formally requesting that the board ban me from using any HOA amenities, including the clubhouse, the gym, the pool, and the guest parking system, until I agreed to stop contacting her and accept the enforcement guidelines. She attached a log of every email I had sent to the board and the management company, which totaled 4 emails over 2 weeks, none of which contained a single threat or insult. The board president forwarded the email to me with a 1-line note. We will discuss this at the emergency meeting. Do not respond to Evelyn directly. I did not. I had something better. I had a police incident number from a prior HOA trespass attempt that showed a pattern, and I was saving it for the right moment. 3 months before all this started, Evelyn had tried to enter a homeowner's backyard to photograph an allegedly unpermitted shed. The homeowner caught her on camera climbing over the side gate and called the police. The responding officer issued a trespass warning and filed an incident report. The homeowner told me about it during a cookout, and I asked for a copy of the report. He sent it to me the same day. I had been holding on to it ever since, waiting for Evelyn to push too far. Now she had. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. on a Thursday. The management office said the regional supervisor would be attending, and that all enforcement policies would be reviewed. The regional supervisor was only in town until 8 p.m. that night, and the meeting had to happen before she left. The management office told me I had to catch them today, or I would have to wait another month for the next review cycle. I could not wait another month. The tow truck was still patrolling. Evelyn was still calling different tow drivers like she was speed dialing chaos, trying to find one who would hook my guest's car without asking questions first. I had seen 3 different tow trucks in 4 days, each one a little more aggressive than the last. On Wednesday, one day before the meeting, I had my first set piece. I was at the gas station filling up before my night shift when Evelyn pulled in and parked at the pump across from me. She got out, saw me, and walked straight over. She did not say hello. She said, "You need to drop this before you make it worse for yourself." I asked her what she meant. She said the board was going to side with her because she had documentation and I had complaints. I asked her what documentation. She said she had timestamps for every guest parking violation, including mine, and that the tow vendor had body cam footage of every enforcement action. I said that was great. I would love to see it at the meeting. She stepped closer. She said, "You do not understand how this works. The board does not care about your little records request. They care about liability, and you are creating liability by questioning a vendor relationship that protects the neighborhood." I asked her how towing legal parkers protected the neighborhood. She said, "I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says." Third time, I pulled out my phone and opened the timestamp app I use for work permits. I said, "So just to confirm, you are saying that you have body cam footage of the tow driver enforcing guest parking violations, and that footage includes timestamps that match your authorization logs?" She said yes. I said great, because the city parking officer told me yesterday that your tow vendor does not use body cams. They use handheld scanners with GPS logs, and those logs show 3 of your tows happened on public streets outside HOA property. Her face changed. She said, "Who told you that?" I said, "The city parking officer who showed up after your tow driver tried to hook a car in a legal street spot last week, and the owner called the cops." She said that was a misunderstanding. I said, "The officer issued a citation to the tow company for unlawful removal attempt. Do you want the case number?" She did not answer. She walked back to her car, got in, and drove off without filling her tank. I finished pumping gas, got in my truck, and called my neighbor. I told him to make sure he was at the meeting tomorrow with the doorbell footage and any other videos he had. He said he would be there. He also said he had been talking to the other neighbors, and at least 6 of them wanted refunds for bogus tow fees. 2 of them had already filed complaints with the management company. 1 of them had contacted a lawyer. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a tow driver. He said his name was Marcus. He worked for the company Evelyn contracted, and he wanted to talk to me off the record. He said he had been uncomfortable with some of the tow calls he had been getting from Briarwood Terrace, and he wanted to know if I was the one who filed the complaint with the city. I called him back. He confirmed that Evelyn had been calling him and 2 other drivers on rotation, sometimes multiple times a day, asking them to patrol my street and look for any vehicle without a current decal or a visible guest pass. He said she told him that the HOA board had authorized aggressive enforcement and that he did not need to verify ownership or wait for a complaint. He said he had dashcam footage of her waving him into the neighborhood and pointing at specific cars. He also said she had never mentioned anything about a 6 p.m. rule until 2 weeks ago, and when he asked for written confirmation, she told him it was a verbal board directive and he needed to trust her authority. I asked him if he would be willing to give a statement. He said he could not testify because it would kill his contract, but he could send me the dashcam footage and the text message thread. I said that would be enough. He sent the files that night. The dashcam footage showed Evelyn flagging him down on my street, pointing at my guest's car, and telling him to tow it even though the guest pass was clearly visible on the dashboard. The text thread showed Evelyn asking him to prioritize my address and offering a bonus payment if he could tow my vehicle within 24 hours of any violation. The bonus was $200, cash, outside the normal contract. I printed the text messages. I burned the dashcam footage to a thumb drive. I put everything in a folder with the trespass incident report, the doorbell video, the enforcement logs, and the contract fee schedule. Then I wrote a one-page summary with timestamps and page references. The whole packet was clean, cross-referenced, and ready to hand to anyone who asked a question. The board meeting was in the clubhouse at 6 p.m. I got there at 5:45. The board president, the treasurer, the secretary, and the regional supervisor from the management company were already seated at a folding table in the front. Evelyn was sitting in the front row with her clipboard, her handheld plate scanner on the chair beside her, and a stack of papers that looked like printed emails. My neighbor was in the back row with his phone. 3 other homeowners were scattered around the room. One of them was the woman whose guest had been towed 3 months ago. Another was the guy whose shed had triggered the trespass incident. The board president opened the meeting by saying they were there to review enforcement policies and address concerns about guest parking and tow procedures. She said the regional supervisor was there to provide guidance and ensure that the HOA was operating within legal and contractual boundaries. She did not mention me by name. She did not mention Evelyn. She just said the floor was open for comments. Evelyn stood up first. She said that guest parking enforcement was a critical safety function, that the board had given her full authority to manage vendor relationships, and that recent complaints were the result of a single homeowner trying to avoid accountability for repeated violations. She said she had documentation showing a pattern of non-compliance, and that the tow vendor had acted appropriately in every case. She said the updated enforcement guidelines were available in the clubhouse, and that any homeowner who claimed they did not receive notice had simply chosen not to check the bulletin board. She said she was requesting that the board formally censure the homeowner in question and uphold her authority to continue enforcement without interference. The board president asked if anyone else wanted to speak. I stood up. I said I had documentation that contradicted several of Evelyn's claims and that I was requesting the board review the evidence before making any decisions. The board president asked me to present the evidence. I walked to the front and handed the packet to the regional supervisor. I said, "This packet contains the official guest parking policy from the HOA website, which has no 6 p.m. restriction. It contains the enforcement logs showing 42 tows in 6 months, with 16 overturned and 0 refunds. It contains a tow vendor contract with a per-tow bonus structure that creates a financial incentive for aggressive enforcement. It contains dashcam footage showing the vendor coordinator offering cash bonuses to tow drivers for targeting my address. It contains text messages showing the same. And it contains a police incident report showing a prior trespass attempt by the vendor coordinator that resulted in a formal warning." The room went silent. The regional supervisor opened the folder and started reading. Evelyn stood up and said, "That is a fabricated timeline designed to discredit a legitimate enforcement program." I said, "The dashcam footage has GPS timestamps. The text messages have carrier metadata." The police report has a case number. Everything is verifiable. The regional supervisor looked up and asked Evelyn if she had offered cash bonuses to tow drivers outside the contract. Evelyn said she had provided performance incentives to ensure timely response. The regional supervisor said that was a contract violation and a potential kickback scheme. Evelyn said it was a vendor management strategy. The regional supervisor said it was grounds for immediate suspension. The board president asked if there was anything else. I said yes. I submitted as a formal exhibit at the hearing and watched Karen's face change. I pulled out the police incident report from the trespass attempt and placed it on the table. I said, 3 months ago, the vendor coordinator entered a homeowner's property without permission, climbed a side gate, and photographed a backyard structure. The homeowner called the police. The responding officer issued a trespass warning and filed this report. 2 weeks before the current tow escalation, the vendor coordinator was recorded on doorbell video photographing my vehicle at 11 p.m. without notice or authorization. This is not enforcement. This is harassment, and it is part of a pattern. The regional supervisor read the trespass report. She looked at Evelyn and asked if she had entered homeowner property without permission. Evelyn said she had been conducting compliance inspections as part of her role. The regional supervisor said that role did not grant her the authority to trespass. The board president asked Evelyn to step outside. Evelyn refused. The regional supervisor said, "If you do not step outside, I will recommend your immediate removal from the vendor coordinator position and a formal investigation into contract fraud." Evelyn grabbed her clipboard, her scanner, and her stack of papers and walked out. The regional supervisor spent the next 20 minutes going through the packet. She confirmed that the guest parking policy on file had no time restrictions, that the tow vendor contract did not authorize cash bonuses, and that the enforcement log showed multiple overturned tows with no refund mechanism. She said the HOA would be issuing refunds to all affected homeowners, terminating the current tow vendor contract, and conducting an audit of all enforcement actions from the past year. She also said the board would be voting on whether to remove Evelyn from the vendor coordinator position and ban her from all enforcement-related activities. The vote happened 15 minutes later. 4-0. Evelyn was out. The final showdown happened 3 days later. I got a call from the police asking me to come to the sheriff's substation lobby. When I got there, Evelyn was already sitting at a mediation table with a deputy watching the escalation. She had filed a harassment complaint against me, claiming I had been stalking her, photographing her, and threatening her job. The deputy asked if I had any evidence to dispute the claims. I handed him the same packet I had given the board, plus the text messages from the tow driver and the dashcam footage. The deputy reviewed everything, looked at Evelyn, and said, "Ma'am, based on this evidence, you were the one conducting surveillance and offering financial incentives for targeted enforcement. If you continue to contact this man or file false reports, I will charge you with filing a false complaint and possibly harassment. Do you understand?" Evelyn did not answer. She stood up and walked out. The deputy handed me an incident number and said, "Keep this. If she contacts you again, call us immediately." 2 weeks later, the board met again. This time, the agenda included a formal censure vote. The board president read a statement summarizing the investigation findings. Evelyn had violated the vendor contract by offering unauthorized payments, had conducted unlawful property inspections, had misrepresented enforcement policies to homeowners, and had filed false harassment claims. The board voted to censure her in public, strip her committee powers, and ban her from contacting homeowners outside official meetings. The vote was unanimous. The records request that exposed contradictions and edits turned into a full forensic review. The management company discovered that Evelyn had been editing enforcement logs after the fact, changing timestamps and violation codes to make overturned tows look justified. She had also been deleting emails from homeowners who complained about refunds. The edits were sloppy. The metadata told the whole story. The management company fired her from the vendor coordinator role and referred the case to their legal team for possible fraud charges. Karen's own clip proved the opposite of her claim. The dashcam footage showed her pointing at a car with a visible guest pass and telling the tow driver to take it anyway. The footage had audio. In the audio, the tow driver asked if the pass was valid. Evelyn said, "I do not care what you think. I care what the rule says." The driver asked what rule banned guest passes after 6 p.m. Evelyn said, "The rule I am telling you right now." The driver hesitated. Evelyn said, "Do you want the bonus or not?" The driver hooked the car. That clip went into the legal file, and it ended any chance Evelyn had of claiming she was just following policy. The HOA removed the enforcement action and voided the ledger entry. My guest's tow fee was refunded in full, plus an apology letter from the board president. 6 other homeowners got the same. The total refund payout was $8,000. The tow vendor contract was terminated, and the new vendor was required to submit written authorization requests for every tow with a 48-hour review window. Karen was ordered to stop contacting the narrator directly. The cease contact order was added to the censure resolution and filed with the county. If she violated it, the HOA could pursue a restraining order. She did not violate it. She stopped coming to board meetings. She stopped posting in the group chat. She moved out of Briarwood Terrace 4 months later. I kept the incident number. I kept the dashcam footage. I kept the enforcement logs and the edited metadata file. I do not know if Evelyn ever faced fraud charges. I do know the board implemented a new enforcement policy that requires written complaints, photographic evidence, and board approval before any tow. I also know that the new vendor coordinator is a retired fire captain who does not carry a handheld plate scanner and does not threaten people with lean emails. The neighborhood is quieter now. The tow trucks do not patrol anymore. The group chat is boring again. My guest parks on the street whenever they visit, and no one bothers them. I still work nights. I still check my driveway before every shift. I still keep my records in a folder by the door, just in case. But every time I see an orange cone, I think about Evelyn waving that barcode sticker and yelling that the scan results said tow and she trusted the scan. She trusted the scan more than she trusted the truth, and in the end, the truth had better metadata. I hope your driveway stays tow-free.